get you.
I've been informed that they showed off Yasuke gameplay today in Assassin's Creed Shadows, and that when he fights, there is a hip-hop soundtrack only for him.
When we refer to someone as yellow, we consider them to be what?
Chinese?
I'm not in my usual... Well, my usual set is literally right over there, but I'm not going to go get up and record it over there. You can still see the green screen. I can still put weird shit up on there, right? But my first attempt at recording this video was the first test for this little asshole, all right? This little cheap Chinese microphone, which, you know, I thought there are some okay cheap Chinese microphones, and then there are some bad cheap Chinese microphones. I have been getting a really bad string of bad cheap Chinese microphones. This is a piece of dog shit, okay? It sounded so bad, I was just like, there's no salvaging this. I played with every audio setting there is on Premiere Pro. No, I just have to, I have to redo the whole thing, because this little thing sounds exactly the way that, like, fucking, it is Jay Schlatt's Funny Mic. That's what this thing is. That is this thing's quality. Dog shit. So, I'm certain you've read the title of the video, and yes, I am a little late hopping on the AC Shadows hate train, and while I don't have an essay about why Ubisoft is a bad company aside from the fact that they're French, I am both a novelist and a history nerd. AC Shadows has a dog shit story, at least based on the summary I read and as much of the gameplay as I could put up with. Of course, watching other people play the game, because there's no way in hell I'm spending $70 on that piece of garbage.
Are you ready to embark on an unforgettable journey? Ghost of Tsushima transports you to a...
And the AC Shadows story is dog shit even by modern Assassin's Creed standards, which, if you've played Valhalla, you know is not that high a bar. I also had a shower thought about why is it that every single piece of media centered around Japanese history is centered around specifically Oda Nobunaga. Every single one, like every anime, every game, every fucking movie, but everything I've seen or have cared to investigate, like, aside from the World War II stuff, I guess, pretty much everything is set during the Sengoku period and focuses on Oda Nobunaga. I don't care how awesome he is, I'm kind of sick of seeing his face. And then I realized, oh, it's always him because he's the main guy in feudal Japan, and that matters for Assassin's Creed because ninjas. And then I realized that, you know, the early modern period probably isn't the only point in time where ninjas played a key role, so I went digging, and that's how this video came about. I'm gonna kill two birds with one stone here. I'm gonna shit on Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I'm gonna go dig into ninja history. Both Yasuke and Naoe, culture war stuff aside, which, fair enough, there's a lot of valid criticism there, both of them are badly written characters, because Sweet Baby Inc. thinks act structures are a part of the patriarchy and character arcs are a form of racism. So here's a list of every single historical or semi-historical figure who would have been a better protagonist than either of these two, and maybe lets us see a perspective on Japanese history aside from, oh, look at Oda Nobunaga, he's so cool, right, guys? He's so awesome. I wish I could be as cool as Oda Nobunaga. What's classical Japan? Asuka period, never heard of that. Even Oda himself is tired of it.
I will take this dishonor no longer. Ubisoft, you write like a 14-year-old Wattpad user, and you hire mentally ill, childless white devil harpies as consultants, and you are surprised when your product is dog shit.
But before we get into all of that, if you like what you see here, do me a favor and hit the associated algorithm buttons. You know what they are. I do mostly history stuff, but I also venture into fantasy and world building related topics, specifically when it surrounds one of my books, because if you haven't read my channel name, I am in fact an author, no longer just aspiring. If you think I would be a better storyteller than Ubisoft, which, let's be fair, that bar is in hell, you should check out my novel Iskander's Game, The Shadow of Macedon. It's an urban fantasy action adventure thing about the recovery of the tomb of Alexander the Great, and I've been pitching it as Percy Jackson meets Uncharted. So if you like either of those things, or if you just like history or martial arts or folklore in any sense of the word, this is probably going to be up your alley. The first 2 chapters are available for free on my website if you want to give it a test drive. You can get notified about its release on May 21st through my emailing list, and you can pre-order the ebook on Kindle right now if that's your thing. All the links associated with that are in the description. So, in case you, I don't know, didn't have a childhood, ninjas are cool. They were primarily spies and assassins that were used by the powerful nobles of the Sengoku period in Japan, primarily the Sengoku period, but they've been around since before that. But that was like their main time in the limelight. And they had a bunch of like really cool shit that they used to spy on and assassinate people or scout out places that, to my knowledge, is not really taken advantage of in the Assassin's Creed game, where they did shit like they used their swords as a step stool. I don't know why that's cool to me, it just is. Or they would have these little eggshells that they would like put pepper and like broken glass and I think something else and sand in there. And that would be their version of like pocket sand, so they could crush the eggshell in their hand and just throw it at someone's eyes. And those glass shards, they get like stuck under the eyelids and shit. And you know what? Before I go into a tangent about that, I'm just gonna stop it there. My point with this is, if a ninja is a good ninja, history is probably not gonna know who they are. As such, there aren't a ton of historical ninjas that we actually know about, but given Ubisoft's flexible opinion on what is and isn't historical, I'm gonna say it's okay to go with legendary figures as well. And that brings us to our earliest ninja, Yamato Takeru. Yamato Takeru was a semi-legendary prince who was the son of Japan's 12th emperor and was active during the 2nd century AD. And yes, this is the point where you realize that focusing solely on the Sengoku period is pretty much like prioritizing about 100 years of history over another 1,500 years that basically goes unmentioned. Although, to be fair, like a lot of other Asian countries, the first 500 to 1,000 years of Japanese history is very shrouded in mystery because the records were written like a long time ago. I'm not sure when. I think it's like around the 6th century when these records come about that I'm using here. Most people agree that like a good like 99% of this book is fake / mythological, unless there's direct archaeological evidence for such a thing happening. And normally this would be a problem for me, but when it comes to writing stories, this actually this gives you room to work, so this might actually be a good thing. The first 500 years of Japanese history is like Xia dynasty levels of dubious. The first 9 emperors are considered to be more or less entirely non-existent, with the 10th possibly, and I gotta put big emphasis on possibly, maybe existed. Not until the 29th emperor do you get someone who definitely existed. And the first record of Japan being Japan is specifically from like 300 AD, which is a full 100 years after when Yamato Takeru's story takes place. And yeah, so like 400 of those years are dubious, and then the 400 before that are more or less entirely mythical. And Yamato Takeru is from that dubious 400 years, which I think is better than the 400 mythical years, but yeah, this is what we're working with. That said, I think it would have been really interesting if Ubisoft went and made a game that was set in like ancient, possibly mythical Japan, where it's a mix of like the real archaeological evidence that we have of like Neolithic to like early metalworking cultures that we have in Japan from around that time, combined with the legendary histories. So it's as if like the legendary histories that were written later maybe was just like an anachronistic retelling of stuff that actually happened, sort of the way that like how in medieval art like biblical figures are always depicted, except for like Jesus and a few other notables, are depicted as wearing like clothes that are appropriate for the time. Same thing happens with Alexander the Great, and like no, that's not what they would have worn, but the medieval people didn't really care. And I suspect that back in 600 AD Japan, they didn't really give a shit what people were wearing back in the day either. Takeru's story starts with him murdering his brother in cold blood, as one does, and to keep him at a distance and to redirect his temperament somewhere else so he doesn't get also murderated, the emperor sent him to fight the enemies of the Yamato court, specifically the Kumaso people who lived on Kyushu and are thought to be an Austronesian people. This is also a period of Japan where the dominant ethnic group of Japan, who it would be a lot easier if they had like a specific name for themselves that they didn't use to also call their country. Sort of how, okay, the best comparison I can make is China, where China is the name of the country in English, but the name of the country in Chinese is Zhongguo, which just means Middle Kingdom. But the people of China, so they call themselves Zhongguoren, which means Chinese people, which means people of the Middle Kingdom. But the specific ethnicity of the majority of Chinese people are Han or Huaxia. I don't know where Huaxia comes from. Han comes from the golden age that they had like right after the Qing dynasty. But so it's kind of like that in Japan as well, where the Yamato court, the people that make up that court, for some reason, are not called the Yamato people, or at least not to my knowledge, which I think that would have been a decent way to categorize them in comparison to all the other ethnic groups they were competing with on the Japanese islands. And the Kumaso are one of these people groups. But Takeru, in order to kill all the Kumasu, well, kill like 2 Kumasu, specifically the leaders, the chieftains. It's very vague. He cross-dresses as a maidservant and sneaks into a drinking party in order to get close to the Kumasu chieftain and stab him to death. Unfortunately, after that act, instead of no longer being worried about Takeru trying to kill him, the emperor was now worried that Takeru was both a psychopath and a femboy. That was a joke. The emperor's mind was just unchanged, is what they call it, because again, everything is very vague. So Takeru instead is sent to the east to do more of the empire's bloody work. And Takeru, understandably, became pretty depressed about the fact that his earlier feats hadn't absolved him in his father's eyes, but his aunt, the high priestess of the sun goddess Amaterasu, showed him some compassion and offered him the sword used by Susanoo, the brother of Amaterasu. The explanation of what Takeru did in the Eastern Lands is very vague, but there's a little story there. about him getting caught in a storm on his way there, and his wife ended up having to sacrifice herself in order to quell the anger of the gods. But after that, very vague. But again, this is a good thing if you're writing. You can then put the main chunk of your story into that area of vagueness and write whatever the fuck adventures you want. And you already have a decent setup there of Takaru feeling the need to like redeem himself in his father's eyes, and his previous attempts having not been enough. If you wanted to give him a positive growth arc, perhaps you would have the story be about him finding a way to live with himself without his father's approval. But there's opportunity, there's space there for you to work your theoretical creative magic. That said, you would have to come up with your own ending, because on the return from the Eastern Lands, Takaru's death is a little anticlimactic. He blasphemes a local mountain deity who curses him to fall ill and die. If you want to make an Assassin's Creed story set in a more ancient, more mysterious time period, more akin to the story of Assassin's Creed Origins, this would be the place to do it. Which, as far as I'm concerned, AC Origins was the last time any AC game had, like, good writing. Odyssey is passable, but some of that dialogue just doesn't sit right with me. Imagine a style of ancient Japan where Takaru and all the other legends about Japanese history are real, but in the legends they've been anachronistically time-shifted to whenever they were written. So in this reality, Takaru would likely be a member of the Yayoi culture, bringing rice cultivation, metallurgy, and other Bronze Age technologies to the Japanese islands, fighting against the native Jomon culture and other people groups like the Kumaso. There are also some Chinese legends about a shaman queen from Japan named Himiko from around this time, which might be an interesting side character. I don't know if you guys are having the same, like, wheel spinning in your head as I am when I hear this stuff. This is a cool concept, but of course, it's a niche time period and there isn't that much material to use. But this character offers a unique setting and a space for creativity. That said, we probably shouldn't trust Ubisoft with said creativity, because I mean, you've seen what they do with stuff that's supposedly set in stone. The next instance of espionage being highlighted in Japanese history are the agents operating under Prince Shotoku, the regent of Empress Suiko, which, you know, boom, two supporting characters right there. While there are no specific agents mentioned in this time period, which is the Asuka period, by the way, that leaves you space to create your own, preferably Japanese, protagonist. The Asuka period of Japan, during which all this happened, is heavily defined by the introduction of Buddhism to Japan. And whenever you have a scenario where a culture is receiving this sudden introduction of a wildly different religion, there's always interesting shit that's happening politically. The Soga clan, which Suiko and Shotoku were a part of, ruled Japan from the shadows initially, before just saying fuck it and taking over the government for real, and creating a Confucian-inspired constitution. The Soga were also huge advocates for Buddhism, and this is a period of general Chinese influence on Japan and clan politics, which makes for, again, a fairly dynamic landscape in which to set a game about assassins and spies.
You tell me it's a Jordan real. He fly in sky and breathe fire. Okay. Very nice, very nice. You try DMT. Okay. What you think of Stinky Whipple? Whipple gay. They fat, they ugly, they stupid. They go back to store.
This is also a period where that Chinese cultural influence is very recognized by Japanese people, and a lot of them don't like it, which, fair enough. You have certain things like Prince Shotoku himself, who was heavily influenced by the Chinese, throwing insults at the fucking Tang court, which Alright, buddy. And I imagine a lot of the Soga clan's enemies operated on a platform of being anti-Chinese, which... That's interesting. Just imagine the cultural tensions between the pro and anti-Buddhist factions and the pro and anti-Chinese factions, all under the sheer force of influence from the Tang Dynasty.
Donald Trump don't trust China. China is asshole.
A potential protagonist could be seeking to force Japan to reform under Shotoku's leadership, or be trying to defend the land from Chinese influence by fighting against Shotoku. I don't know about you, but I would play that game. Also, we have a lot more archaeological evidence here where you don't have to, you don't have to guess at what the society might have been like. There's a lot. These people actually existed. But okay. Fine. You want to do the Sengoku period. Fine. You could have, if you were so insistent on the Sengoku period, you could have assassins actually fight against Oda Nobunaga by having your main character be a member of the Iga or Koka clans, which were military republics of, and I need to emphasize this, ninja warlords, which I cannot stress enough how cool that sounds to my inner 12-year-old. Or you could have a story about the survivors of those two clans trying to escape from Oda after Nobunaga dropped the 1500s equivalent of a sword missile on their heads.
Today we're talking about the top secret ninja bomb. Bomb's not really a great word because it doesn't explode, it's more like a missile full of katanas.
Or you could go a little later, just a smidge later. And you could do a story about the ninja helping the first Tokugawa shogun escape after Nobunaga gets assassinated. There's a lot of different places where you can insert your own ninja protagonists here. There's a lot of shit going on, which, obviously, that's why there's so much media made about the Sengoku period. But what about specific characters? Well, there's no shortage, I can tell you that much. There's, first off the top of my head, Kumakawa, a boy whose father was imprisoned by a monk. The father, who I think is a powerful noble of some kind. I don't know all the Japanese feudal titles. But the father dies in his cell, and Kumakawa swears an oath to kill the monk. And he sneaks into the monk's family house to spy on his guards by pretending to be sick. And this kid is 13, by the way. And he kills the monk in his sleep and gets away before being trained as a ninja in the service of Takeda Shingen, one of the most powerful daimyo of the period. I'm certain you can imagine some ways you could spin that story to fit in the Assassin's Creed lore. It's not that hard. Oh, or how about Hattori Hanzo? Probably the most famous ninja of all time. He was a member of the Iga clan and helped the Tokugawa shogun become the ruler of a united Japan. That's an interesting story and would probably appeal more to a Japanese audience by surveying a really important moment in Japanese history. Or maybe you want more of an anti-hero. How about Ishikawa Goemon? Basically Japanese Robin Hood, and I'm not generalizing there. He was a bandit and an outlaw who stole from the rich and gave to the poor, and apparently tried to assassinate Oda Nobunaga more than once using the same method of dripping poison into his mouth on a okay, maybe he's not that great an assassin. But you have a shit ton of legendary material because this guy was the centerpiece of historical fan fiction for 200 years after his death. But what about someone like Fuda Komaro, the guy that killed Hattori Hanzo and operated as a guerrilla terrorist and bandit against Toyotomi Hideyoshi and later the Tokugawa shogun. These Japanese Yanjishika, you should go watch my Yanjishika video. Momochi Sandaiu is the more or less perfect blank slate to write your own character onto. Not much is known about him except that he was a leader of one of the ninja clans, I think the Iga, maybe? I'm not sure on that. But he was the leader of a ninja clan and served under Oda Nobunaga, but he died in battle but there are a lot of legends about him not actually dying in battle and having lived on as a farmer. You could do a sort of John Wick kind of thing with him, you know? Or why not Kato Danzo, the fucking ninja wizard? This guy apparently was a sorcerer as well as a ninja and could do shit like swallow bulls, fly, hypnotize people. Okay, you know what? Maybe he's not great for an Assassin's Creed game. Okay, although with some of the shit that was happening in Odyssey and Valhalla, you know what? Yeah, go with it. Ninja wizard. If you want someone just to stand in for Yasuke's role as, like, the big guy, I guess, who's actually Japanese and maybe lives up to the virtuous character of real life Naoe, who I hear is, not a lesbian and is actually an example of a virtuous wife in Japanese culture, maybe have your secondary protagonist be Wada Korimasa. He's a little milquetoast, yeah, but he's still a samurai ninja, which is, you know, that on its own is still pretty cool, and he's held in very high regard by Oda Nobunaga. He was also a supporter of the Catholic Church, which there could be an interesting dynamic with that. You could, perhaps, delve into some deeper themes if you had the balls, Ubisoft. Okay. Let's say you really want a foreigner. All right. Let's say you want to spit on all the Japanese guys out there and say you need a foreigner. All right. How about Denrinbo Raikei? He was a Chinese martial artist who went to Japan, lost a duel, and so he got inducted into a ninja clan. And eventually, according to some dojos, the next time you see him in history, he starts leading other ninjas in attacks against the Tokugawa shogunate. Which, you know, by the way, if you are gonna make a Assassin's Creed game set in Japan, the Tokugawa shogunate, in my opinion, is the, like, immediate, yes, that's the Templars. You know what? Better than all those, alright? There's so many damn ninja running around during the Sengoku period, you might as well just make up your own and have them be Japanese. Assassin's Creed games can take place literally anywhere on this planet. If you want a black protagonist so badly, Ubisoft, set it in Africa. Hell, it doesn't even have to be Black Africa. Bayek was Nubian, but at least there was, like, a likely chance someone like him would have actually been in Egypt. Oh, and also, Bayek is just written by competent people, which is why people like him. Like, would it have killed you to make Yasuke a side character? Or better yet, write an actual character. We get one Asian game, one, and you throw the Asian men to the fucking curb for a semi-legendary Gary Stu, effectively. I may participate in some international Asian racism from time to time, but the French have no right to pull something like this. And that's the real lesson here, guys. That's the real lesson. French progressives are the most racist people on earth. Anytime they get their grubby little snail slime-covered fingers into another culture, they completely disregard reality and just start making shit up. Oh, or that Emilia Perez movie that was an Oscars plant and about the trans cartel leader, also made by the French, completely out of touch with both Mexicans and trans people, which I don't know how you get it that wrong, but Jesus fucking Christ. The lesson here is never let the French touch your culture. If you're going to be racist, be accurately racist. And Ubisoft, I hope the ghosts of the samurai haunt you in your nightmares until you let people who actually like history write your fucking history games and get your fucking little French tendrils out of it. Okay?